Capital. This is Dave from Native Community Capital. This is an episode on finance we did with Leanne Apodaca from the Pueblo Connections Podcast. It's an edited version, so to enjoy the full episode, make sure to check out our weekly podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, the opinions expressed are those of the individual and not necessarily those of their employers. Enjoy.
Connection. I hope everybody has had a wonderful couple of days. Today, my guest is Dave Castillo. He is the CEO of Native Community Capital. Good morning, Dave. How are you?
Good morning. It's good to be here.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming on the show. I'm so excited. I know you all do a lot of really good things for Native communities. And I know the pandemic has hit everybody crazy. And so I just would really like to hear more about your business, how you got it started up, and where you're from. And I know you've been able to do some interviews on Indian country, and I do report a lot of the stories that come out of Indian country. So I'm so happy, and I'm happy to have you this morning. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I have been doing a number of interviews and guest speaking since the Biden administration came into office. It's really neat to have folks in DC reaching out, not just to me, but to Indian country in general. But just to back up a little bit, so Dave Castillo, CEO for Native Community Capital. We have our headquarters in Laguna, which I know that's where you're from. So
yes.
Happy, St. Joseph's Feast Day coming up next week, right?
Yes, it is. It's going to be September 19th on Sunday.
Right. So a happy and safe St. Joseph's Feast Day. I know the EOC, the Emergency Operations Committee out there, has been stressing safety. So congratulations.
Yes.
Has really been leading the way, I think, in Indian country, at least here in the Southwest, in terms of the protocols they've put in place, the emphasis on safety, and just doing the right thing out there. I know it's been rough for a lot of people, so prayers and blessings to all of you out there listening who have maybe been affected by this, and
yes.
And thank you to our tribal leadership and to the EOC and everyone working to keep this under control and get to I don't want to say back to normal, but get back to something that makes sense for all of our communities. So thank you for that. So
yes.
We're based out of Laguna, Pueblo. We also have an office here in Arizona, which is where I'm calling in from today. Let's see, what do we do, or how do we?
Well, I just wanted to have our listeners know, where are you from, and how did you get into this?
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so my mom's native from Mexico, actually, but I grew up here, and my mom's actually a minister. And so she opened her church up to a lot of the native folks who come up through, South America and the Americas. So
yes.
And so then I went to college and started doing stuff there, kind of radical, we had a former Bush secretary who was one of the provosts at our college, and she was trying to shut down the Indian Center. Well, actually all the centers,
oh my goodness,
Latino Center, the Asian Center, the African American Center, the Native American Center. And so we ended up doing a sit-in led by the Latino students, and of course the Native students, and everyone was involved. The professors really helped us out. They did teach-ins, and it was really kind of neat. So
wow.
But my mom's work has always been, again, kind of in a way as an advocate, as a female in a kind of a male-dominated environment. She was the one that opened up the first homeless shelter in the little town we grew up in, which was in California.
Oh, really?
And yeah.
Two things I wanted to talk about really quick that you had brought up. The different student centers that they have for Native Americans, Asians, Hispanics, the African American, those types of resource centers that are on pretty much all the campuses here. in the United States, people don't understand that these resource centers, they are so important to the students because it gives them, number one, some support, and number two, they can feel like family again because some of the students come from different states and they're far away from family. So if they can come and be, somewhat in that type of a setting, it really does help their morale and it helps them to finish college. Would you agree?
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. It was called the, I don't know, Native American Cultural Center. I know that I went to school with Herman Agoyo and
Okay.
Trish Makino, and they kind of launched an effort to say, well, it should be called the Native American and Pueblo.
Right.
They never changed the name, but the point is that everyone came together there, and
Right.
I think that's the thing that the administration didn't understand. And we had some Anglo students saying, "Well, why do you guys get a special place to yourselves? What do we get?" And our reaction was like, "You get the whole rest of the school, this whole university.
You get the whole 50 states. Hello."
So
You're talking to the wrong people for sympathy there.
Yeah, not to mention that that land was taken from the Muwekma people right there on the coast, and Father Junipero Serra was a big part of the atrocities that happened there. So yeah, it was kind of a silly argument, right? It's like, hey, we're not arguing for anything other than some place for us to come together and be relatives to each other.
Exactly.
And just have a place where we can do things and be ourselves. And it was a great place. We also had a themed dorm that had Native American resident fellows, which was awesome. And so it was a weird time, but that's, I think, probably where I really kind of lit up around not activism, but advocacy. And then I was working for a guy named Marty Wakazu, Oglala from Pine Ridge, and he is still the executive director for the Native American Health Center there in the Bay Area.
Oh, wow.
And worked for his wife a little bit on a volunteer basis at the Friendship House Association of American Indians, which is a residential alcohol and substance abuse program for natives there in the city. And it was just great. I mean, when I was at college, I had a lot of professors who, were experts in their fields, and I asked them a question and they had the answers. But when I went to work for Marty and Helen, they just said, hey, we need to figure this out. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. This is what needs to get done. I'm here to support you. I believe in you. Go do it. And it was amazing. It was a different kind of mentorship. It was just leading by example, seeing kind of what Marty had done with his life and all the impact that him and his wife had there in the Bay Area and the Native community there. And then he sent me out here, and he said, hey, I've got a friend who's got a project that needs some help. Why don't you just head out there and volunteer for a little while, and he'll hire you eventually. But right now they just need someone to help out. So I did. I just came over and volunteered for an organization called Eagle People at Dawn, which was owned by a guy from Rosebud, a guy named Butch Artichoker.
Oh.
And so they had this idea, to do housing on tribal lands and to find ways to finance that. And they were way ahead of their time is really what happened. But that turned into a relationship with Intertribal Council, with John Lewis, who's Mojave, and
Yes.
Don Otham, and then Alberta Tippecanoe, who's Navajo. And they were leading that organization since 1972. And again, this has just happened over and over to me over my career, is just people kind of taking me under their wing.
It is just so ironic because I don't ever think anything is an oops, whether good or bad. There was an intention there for us to have the interactions and the experiences that we have in life. It's intentional. You know what I mean? That's what's going to make us. But it's up to us to make the choices. Do we want to go that route or do we want to go a different route? That's the difference. You know what I mean? Are those two choices that you have. And it seems like going along, you have made the right choices and you find your niche. Because that's like me with what I do. You can't learn it in, in college or anything. All of the what is it? The background knowledge, yes, you can get from college, but you have to have a niche with dealing with people, dealing with tribes, because let me tell you, tribal government puts good old boys government to shame, right?
Yeah. Sure.
And so as you're going through and you're experiencing all of these things, and I did want to point out one thing, sorry, we got off a little bit, was to your mom, being in a male-dominated field. It is true. It is harder a little bit. But you know what? That only makes you stronger. I know that has been the truth for me because what I do and what I have done, it has been a male-dominated world in tribal government. And that's just culture and tradition, of course. But I really have enjoyed the knowledge that I have learned from all of these men and some of the women that are in there as well. And the history of not just my Pueblo, but all of the 19 Pueblos and the 2 Apache tribes that I've worked with here in New Mexico. It has been, you can't find that in a textbook. Just like your experiences, I'm sure you cannot find those in your textbooks anymore.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. My daughter started college last year, and then my youngest daughter, she just started junior high, and we were talking about that, and I had a reminder. I said, the schooling isn't and to teach you how to learn, really, to
right.
kind of gain those skills.
It's that background that I was talking about. It's teaching you how to write a report correctly and grammar and things like that. I guess like general studies. General tools that we sometimes take for granted. But when you're out in what we're doing, unfortunately, reports mean everything and numbers mean everything. And I am not one. I'm not one that I do not like reports. But anyway.
Yeah, but there's a way to do it that makes sense and that
captures everything that you're trying to portray out there.
Yeah, even journeyman, whether it's you're a carpenter or a welder or a nurse, there's certain ways that things get done that are accepted, and you learn that maybe through a trade school or on the job, but you really learn when you come across a problem and you got to solve it, and you think, well, maybe I use this tool, maybe I use this technique, maybe I use this approach.
Right.
And I think my daughter didn't even realize it. She's little, but she likes to watching documentaries. And I said, see, that's what I'm talking about. You're taking it upon yourself to learn something. You've got an interest in it, and you go after it. And teacher told you to learn about forensics, but you saw this thing and it was kind of interesting to you, and you're teaching yourself about something.
Right.
So I think that's a big part of it. And it was a little bit of a shock, right, to just get thrown in the water. It was like, hey, we got this big issue, go take care of it. And I don't know how I'm going to do that, but we'll figure it out, and I'll lean on you, and I'll ask the questions. And I think with regard to the, women, they've always been leaders in their own ways. And, you say it makes you stronger, but it makes you fierce, because, don't get between, mama bear and her cubs, right?
Right.
She's going to protect, and she's going to make sure. And so a little shout out, I think a lot of so many of the women that have been in my life are like that, just fighters and protectors. And, my wife and the folks I'm affiliated with, a little shout out to Native Women Lead, which is based there in Albuquerque. They put on the conference, and they're growing into an organization, and they're providing those opportunities for Native women entrepreneurs.
Right.
So, I think that fierceness is necessary, because the world can crush you if you don't fight back a little bit. So that's kind of part of my upbringing and I think what I gravitate to, and kind of led to what we're doing now, which is Native Community Capital. And it started out real simply. We had a friend of my boss's, John, in Alberta. He used to be the economic development director for Navajo Nation, and then he headed over to D.C., and he was on assignment at the Department of Treasury, and he got a study done on barriers to lending in Indian country. Basically, why is it? And this is the thing that was said. This was actually there was a meeting at Pine Ridge back in, I want to say, I don't know, 2000, maybe 2001. And, there was one of the presidential secretaries was out there kind of touting this new program. It was called the New Market Tax Credits Program. And this gentleman from the community raises his hand from the audience, and he asks the secretary, he said, "Why is it that the United States can put a man on the moon, but it can't figure out how to put banks on our reservations?"
Mm-hmm.
And that was really the beginning of it. And that's what this gentleman, his name is Roger Boyd, he said, well, let's look at this. So he commissioned a study back in 2001, went all across the nation talking with tribes and tribal leaders and bankers and whatnot. He submitted that study to Congress as justification to make funds available for tribes and Native-led organizations to get money from the Department of Treasury and make it available to tribal members for small businesses, debt consolidation, home loans, anything that anyone needs money for. They said, if the banks aren't going to do it for us, we have to do it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So let's set aside some money and get that started. And it happened just like that. And we were one of the first to get access to it. And at the time it was called All Indian Pueblo Council.
Right.
They got one of the first allocations as well. And that's what set us on our way. And lots has happened between then and now, but that's how we got started. And it's because, the tribal leadership, we got together with them and, they said, I don't understand, I'm summarizing here, but the tribal leadership were saying, those cities and towns right on the other side of the reservation border, they get access to, tax credit financing, conventional financing, even exotic types of financing. And here we are stuck with just these government grants.
Exactly. And speaking of which, my mom was from Okeowinge or San Juan Pueblo. So I'm half San Juan and I'm half Laguna. And it's true, San Juan is maybe 5 miles north of Española. And there's a bank right there. As soon as you get into Española. But we can't have one, like you just said, on the reservation. And there's some pueblos and nations that are far from Albuquerque or Santa Fe, far from the main cities. And it is hard. It is a hardship at times to get out there just to cash a check or just to, get some money out for the week. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the tribal leadership were talking about exactly that. They said, you know what, we run our payroll through, I won't even name the bank, this bank or that bank. All our casino revenues flow through the bank. We're not going to put it in a safe on the reservation, right? It's sitting at a bank. Right. And yet when we go back, our tribal members go to that bank, they won't even pick up the phone. They won't make them a car loan. They won't make them a loan for their small business. How is it that we can have all this money sitting over there with these financial institutions, and they won't serve our people? So, yeah, the frustration is real.
Yeah, no, it is. And we could probably go on and on about this because I've been in tribal government for about 20 years. And oddly enough, or ironic enough, I was the executive director for AIPC when it was AIPC. Now it's All Indian Council of Governors. But yeah, APCG now. But when it was AIPC, I was able to work and work with some of the governors on some of that. And it had come up many, many times that we can invest outside, but we don't invest internally. And so, there's lots of different ways, I guess, we could look at that. But, what pueblos have you worked with here in New Mexico, if I can ask?
Yeah, I think we've worked with almost all of them. I mean, just last month we closed a loan at Jemez. We've got another one in the pipeline now. Before that, we did one at Tasuki, Escaleta, OK.
Yeah.
Of course, at Laguna. Trying to think, Cochiti we work with. And then it just, comes and goes, right, with the tribal leadership and the program staff, because we were working with, like, Piccaries, and we had a few meetings up at Taos at one point. But then, sometimes when the leadership changes,
Oh,
like
yeah.
one year to the next, it's a little hard to kind of maintain things. So that's one of the things that I've always done is, you kind of look across the landscape, see who's ready to go, because, we're not, if you look at Wells Fargo, they're a $2 trillion company, right?
Right.
So we're tiny. We're like, on the molecular scale compared to those big institutions. So we don't
Right.
have a lot of cash like they do. So
You don't
we
have a
to
lot
be
of
really
horses
judicious.
pulling your wagons right now, do you?
Yeah.
Like Wells Fargo does.
Yeah, no, we're fun. We do the cleanup. We take care of the horse, the one horse, good horse we got. We're
You're one
changing
good
the
war
wheels.
pony you got.
Yeah. No, but so that just means that we've got to be really judicious with our time and our resources, and we look for good partners, and they're out there. It's really. I just sent an email to a friend of mine who's a consultant because one of the tribal finance officers was saying, "Hey, I need some help on this," and I said, "Oh boy, I'll put you in contact with the right person." And I did a little introduction, and I said, "I don't think anything's impossible when you two." Put your minds to it. You're just so creative, and you've got so much, I think, experience and motivation. And there's those people are out there. They're out there, and they're worth their weight in gold. And so,
Right.
that's what we look for. With the partnerships are important.
Right. And I think too, it's good to educate accounting, any of the CFOs that are there, and as well as administration, because the first thing that comes to mind when they need money is, let's go for a grant. Sometimes those grants are not always as productive as you would like them to be at the end of the day when it finally trickles down to you. And the amount of time of reporting that it takes, was it really worth it? And so I think going after a loan and really getting into the business side of things, it would really, I think, speak volumes to leadership.
Well,
do you
it's
agree?
both
Or
and. Yeah, no, it's both and. Everyone loves free money, right? If you can,
right.
And as tribes, as nonprofits, you can get access to that, use it. But the trick is, don't become reliant on it.
That's exactly right. And I'm all about tribal sustainability. And my thing is, I've worked with Pueblos. I've worked with Pueblos going self-governance, because in my opinion, 638 really doesn't do much. You're still under a contract. But when you 638 in self-governance, that's when you're really taking on that responsibility. And you really have the autonomy to really change the way that money looks and change the way that service looks. And I never want to give $1 back, ever. Once we've taken it, I want to make sure we're going to do something with it, because I don't ever want to give anything back to the state, to the feds, to the county, to whoever we took that money from to make our services work better in our pueblos. So,
That's right.
I'm really all about tribal sustainability. But I wanted to talk about community members on a little smaller scale. Is there anything that your company could do to help, say, community members that are looking for maybe a home improvement loan, or maybe they're a first-time home buyer? And then also, if you could touch on a little bit on, well, not a little bit, but if you could touch on some, some helpful hints for business owners during this time, and looking at loans. Maybe they're looking at, how do we recover from this? And this, a loan may be the only way to get back on our feet. How can you help them?
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, so on the housing side, that's probably the easiest one to deal with, because that's kind of how we got started and really where our focus was. And we've just been, kind of trying to crack that nut for like 10 years, and we've made some good progress. So yeah, one of the issues is that most banks, they're just not interested in financing the construction of a home on the reservation. And the ones that are, like maybe a modular home,
right?
They'll do that, but you're going to pay the price. So that's where we come in. We'll do the construction financing, and then we'll work with our partners to do the long-term piece. So usually once a house is built, then a bank will say, oh, okay, there's something there that is actual collateral, and we could do the mortgage on that. But before it's built, that's too much risk. What if tribal council steps in? What if they don't get their land lease? What if? And so that's kind of where we came in to specialize and said, we have those relationships. We'll work through that process. We'll do the construction loan, and then you help with the long term. But now we're at a place where we can do both, where we can do the construction financing and the long-term mortgage, right, that 30-year mortgage. And the other thing that's exciting is at Laguna, and they had put some funds aside to make those mortgages for tribal members. So we'll see. There's a new administration there, and I think they're going to put, extend that program. But if you know your village officials, go ahead and ask them how that's going, and let them know that, if it's something you can benefit from, encourage them to advocate for whatever's going to be best for the community. It's really something that the tribal leadership needs to deliberate on. But yeah, so that's what we do. And even if the tribe isn't involved, usually the tribe will just call us and say, hey, we've got some tribal members who need a home repair or a rehab or an extension, a new bathroom or a new home. And then we just it's a little handoff, right? Because the tribal housing departments, the TDHEs, are usually dealing with their very low rent or very low income families. And then they'll say, well, we have these other families who don't even qualify for our low rent programs, but they need a home, and can we send them to you? And of course, we always say yes. So check us out on our website and get in touch with our loan officer. Her name's Tab Parr. She's been doing mortgage loans for Native folks for about 22 years. She's a real pro, and she'll walk you through the process.
Now, I have a question real quick, though, Dave, with that. Is it your company that helps? I know a while back there was some opportunity for first-time home buyers there at Laguna, that if you were going to, request to buy a home, that you would have to take a few financial management courses. Was that coming out of your...
Yeah, so so basically the policy and procedures that was approved by Tribal Council had a provision in there for home buyer education and financial literacy. And some folks, will say, hey, I've got a degree, or I work in finance. I don't need to kind of go through that. And that's fine. It's not mandatory. Well, it used to be in the old program, but in the new program, they're saying, "Hey, let's lift that restriction a little bit. We don't want people to have to jump through too many hoops."
Right, and you know what? I think that was a really good incentive to get a home, because you know what, that is part of a life skill. Your finances, like checking accounts, savings accounts, 401ks. What does that mean? Because everybody's out there, they've got a job. They should have some type of general knowledge of their finances and how that all works. And especially when you want to become a homeowner. I mean, why wouldn't you want to have your own home and own that and have some financial stability, and yes, eventually maybe some financial freedom. You know what I mean? And so I think that was... I don't know, in my opinion anyway, I think that was a priceless opportunity for community members to really understand, your finances and why are you working. It's not just to be paying your electric bill or anything like that. There should be a reason, there should be a purpose, there should be some savings, because, I would hope we all can retire at some point. I'm still banking on the lottery though, Dave. I'm still banking on the lottery.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think one of the problems that hits our communities really hard is just, there's historic, economic, social trauma that has just been going on for decades and centuries. And so what that means then is that a lot of times folks haven't, made peace with the money demon, or have had a hard time. They say walking in both worlds, right?
Right.
And we see this all the time, right? You see kind of, it's like they say, we don't really have homelessness on reservations, because, you're going to take your family in. Even if you're already have a crowded home, or even if you don't have enough, you're going to take them in. You're not going to put them on the street. And so you see community members really being successful from a tribal values perspective, right? Doing the things that your extended family, your clan relations, those expectations that you have as a part of the community, you're doing the right thing. But what that means on the other side, on the Anglo side, is that you're failing on the Anglo side, because the Anglo side says, no, be greedy, be self-sufficient, be, independent. And on the tribal side is no, think about others, be part of the community. So it's hard to navigate those two sides. And one of the hardest things is to see, it's, I guess, there's a couple guys talking about this in a traditional way, right? And they said, corn used to be our currency, and even today in our ceremonies, when we give something like this is the most valued kind of thing that we can give. It's a real example and demonstration of the value that we have when we give this kind of dish. Let's say it's prepared in a certain way. Right. And they said, but then, ceremonial time's over and people head down to the casino. Like my father-in-law used to say, is like, I'm going to go invest my money over there at the casino. And I was like, oh God, no, don't do that. So it's hard. It's hard to kind of navigate that. And I think these financial literacy and homebuyer education classes can kind of help center that and put it in the context. Now, of course, you could do this online. You could go listen to a lecture, but I really like the way a friend of mine does it. His name's Jake Foreman. He used to teach at NACA, and he's now over at the New Mexico Community Capital, which has the Native Entrepreneur in Residence program. He puts on a course called Financial Literacy and Business Basics, and I really like the way he does it because it's all about community. And it's Native focused. When he said, the first thing we do is we feed people. We offer them, food. We come together as community. We treat each other like relatives. Yes, we're here to talk about financial literacy and those kinds of topics, but first we're here to come together as community. And I just thought, man, that's really something. They don't say this anymore, but I still say it once in a while. They say, we're not what do you say? He says, we're not a white man, a workbook, and a whiteboard. Meaning we're not just here to kind of talk to you. Right. We're here to come together. And another thing he says is, we have our curriculum. Yes, we have the things that we're going to go over in terms of building a budget and, looking at your credit and these kinds of things. But sometimes, we notice that someone comes to the session and they're heavy with something. And, maybe it's, someone lost their job. Maybe someone's kid had to go to detox or something like that. It's hard to talk about technical things like managing your money when you've got something heavy like that in the room. And so he said, so we put the curriculum aside and we come together as community, just kind of, look at, well, how can this be a tool maybe to help even with those?
Exactly. And that's what I was just going to say. These, or this, this course, it really is a tool to have in your pocket, because it does it helps in so many ways, and we do live in the mainstream world, and the mainstream world revolves around $1, and we just have to accept it. And how can we be successful in accepting that? And I think it's, again, by educating ourselves with our finances.
Absolutely. And there's some people that I think the people that are most speak out against it and say, why do I have to do that? Why do I have to jump through the hoop? Something kind of just tells me those are the folks that are most avoiding kind of dealing with the reality. Because we've had council members who said, I went through the program and it was tough, but gosh, I learned a lot.
Right. Well, and I think it's just because we don't ever want to say, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? And so I know for me, and I think it's just human nature all the way around, when you're not comfortable with something or you just don't know that, you tend to put it on the back burner, hoping it's going to go away, and it doesn't. Yeah. It just gets bigger and bigger. So I think that's just what it is. And we as Native people are very proud, and we don't want to say that we don't know that. You know what I mean? And so, yes, I agree with you when you've got that big pushback from people that are saying, I don't need that. 9 times out of 10, they're the ones that need it the most.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And we need our tribal leadership to kind of, they're examples for us in so many ways, whether they're, part of a religious society, whether they're, elder, whether they're sitting on council, especially the tribal leadership, we need them to kind of support that and really say, hey, even though I'm this person or that person, I can learn too. And so sometimes it's hard because, I say this, a lot of the tribal leadership, whether they're appointed or elected, just because they assume that role doesn't mean that whatever's going on in their own household or their own family, they just leave that at the door.
Right.
They're going to bring that into tribal council chambers with them. And that's a good place to do that. It's a good place to have that discussion. It's a good place to, again, as leadership. I used to sing on a drum, and I know one time it was a sobriety drum, right? I used to work there at the Friendship House, and I got together with the counselors there, and I remember one of the guys, he said, "God, this," because there's things would come up, right? And our head singer would just kind of just say, "Hey, let's talk this through." And one of our guys, he's like, "God, it's weird, a bunch of Indian guys talking about their feelings," and our head singer said, "No, you know what? That's right. This is a place to do it around the drum with each other. We're brothers. And if we can't talk to each other about this, then it's just going to go badly. So let's go ahead and have the conversation. Let's go ahead and talk this through. Let's, say a prayer. Let's sing a song. And, and then we can move on." So I think same thing with the tribal leadership. These things we know they're devastating to our community. I mean, you don't have to read a report or a study to know that people are suffering. And a lot of times it's because they don't have access to the resources they need. And if we just made, it's not like the information is not available.
No.
But we've got to have the courage to go ahead and, look at it and work through it. And I saw someone posted something, they said, being poor is hard. But being financially responsible is also hard. So choose your hard.
Yep. Right.
And choose the hard that's being poor, or choose the hard of working on something. I think it's the latter.
Right. And I agree. And again, it goes back to choices in life. You have 2 choices. I always feel you always have 2 choices. And whichever choice you take, I don't think life or anything is ever easy. But the choices you make is going to depend on, like you said, which is your hard. Your hard easy or your easy.
Yeah.
Again, it's the choices that we all make, and we all have the same choices. We all have those same opportunities. It's just, are you going to, break out of that shell, break out of that mold? Because so many times I see it within our communities, our Native communities, is that we never teach our children, or we never tell our children, yes, you can. It's always that tough love of, oh, you think you're going to be better than us, and you think this, or you think you can do that better. It's not about, and even if it was, why wouldn't you? I want my children to be better than me. I want my daughters to be a better mom. Not that I'm a bad mom, but I'm just saying you always want better for your kids, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And then that's, I think, the telltale of you as a parent, of how you've done that. And as you move in through life and you find yourself in a supervisory position, of course you want your employees to be better than what they were when they first came. Again, it's that encouragement, it's that support, it's that direction that you get. And again, I just think that having some type of a financial literacy course would speak volumes and do so much for the kids. And I think we need to bring that back into school, into our curriculum, because I remember growing up and in junior high, we had like 6 weeks of learning about stocks and the New York Stock Exchange and how that worked. We had we learned how to do taxes and what did taxes mean. We learned the difference between net and gross pay. And I can tell you, not every adult knows the difference between net and gross pay. So again, it's just getting back to the basics.
Yeah. I just saw something. I don't know if they're going to have this in there, but 8 Northern Native Youth Summit is going to be September 21 and 23rd. It's a virtual event, and there's so many resources available. I mean, this is just one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I know there are tribes that have their own, Native youth financial education programs. There's not a ton of them, but they are around. And of course, you've got Native Women Lead, you've got NACA, you've got let's see, who else is out there? There's the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center is going to have a business incubator. I know there are, places like Zuni, they have a Main Street program for their Native businesses. So it's out there. The information is out there. As a matter of fact, we're going to do a series of videos, explainer videos, because a lot of times people will come in and they won't even know the right questions to ask. So we're doing these videos. It's kind of an introduction to finance and lending, if you need a loan for a home or a small business, because a lot of times people have anxiety about it, where it's kind of like, I know my credit is just ruined. Well, have you looked at your credit report? No, but I know it's bad. It's like, well, let's take a look at it first, and then we'll see how bad it is, because we can probably still help. As a matter of fact, the BIA loan guarantee program that we use for our small business loans, specifically in the regulations, it states that the BIA loan guarantee shall not be used except in situations where the lender would not otherwise make the loan. Meaning there should be something wrong with the underwriting. That's what we're here for. We want to make sure that banks and financial institutions are making loans to Native people, even if there's maybe a credit blemish there. The insurance or the guarantee is there to kind of get over that hump. Same thing with the 184 loan guarantee program. USDA has one called the 502. There are programs in place specifically for Native folks.
Right. So don't be scared. If you have questions, like my dad would say, no question is a dumb question. Ask it. I mean, that's the only way you're going to educate yourself and learn something. And so if you all have questions about this, I have a question. Do they have to live on the reservation? Can they be in the urban sector?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we'll serve folks anywhere they're at.
Okay.
And that's a recognition that, there aren't enough homes on the reservations. There aren't enough jobs on the reservation. I had a professor at school who was a demographer, a Cherokee and Choctaw guy, and he wrote about was Native demographics. And he said, everyone talks about reservation Indians and urban Indians, but no one talks about the biggest category of all, which is commuter Indians. People coming back and forth, back between home and where they're living. It's a big population. So, I think the BIA program has a little bit of restriction. The only thing that they say is that whatever the initiative, it has to have an impact on a tribal economy.
Okay.
So sometimes we need to work on that a little bit, but usually it works out. We had a guy who opened a restaurant, and he was able to lease the building from the tribe. The tribe bought the building, so it was their property, it was their asset, but they leased it to him. And of course, he's a tribal member. So there's a direct relationship between his business and the tribe's economy, impacting that tribal economy. So there's usually a way to make the connection.
Great. So, again, speaking of having questions and just wanting information, is there a number? I was financially illiterate for a very long time. But again, I had to make myself accountable. I had to make myself responsible. Again, I had to join the adult world. And so now I'm able to understand where my money is going, how does it flow down, and what can I really save? So I just want that for everybody, because it really does bring you a little bit of peace of mind, and you're not stressing about the next thing and the next thing. And again, it will help you and your family. So I hope you will take that opportunity, because it really is an opportunity, to visit the website and talk to somebody. You never know unless you find out, your circumstances truly. And you know what? A lot of times it really isn't as bad as we think it is. So take that moment. So go ahead, Dave. Give them the information, please. So
our website is www.nativecap, nativecap.org, nativecap, as in Paul.org. Our phone number in New Mexico is 505-552-7050. And if you're outside of New Mexico, you can reach us toll free at 855-628-2272. And the website again is nativecap.org. And we'll look forward to hearing from you. We've got a ton of partners. Back when I started this work, there weren't a lot of us doing this, and now it's so neat to see a whole, community of organizations coming together around better opportunities for borrowing. You don't have to go to the payday lender, right? We know that they prey on Native people. There are more payday lenders in McKinley County, for example, than anywhere else in New Mexico. Oh, and by the way, that happens to have, the highest population of Native people and the highest poverty rate in the state. And so, we want to offer some alternatives to that. So we have partners like Southwest Native Assets Coalition, Native Women Lead, Change Labs, New Mexico Community Capital, and us, Native Community Capital, all working together to provide better options for you, your family, your business, and your home. So talk to us, reach out to us, and talk to each other. We're here to kind of be there with you in community, even though we're talking about money and finance stuff. We come together. We come together all the time anyway. We come together for ceremony. We come together, for work, whether it's ditch cleaning or whatever. We can come together around better options for using money too.
Yes, I agree. I agree. If you're just listening and tuning in, I've been talking with Dave Castillo. And like I mentioned, he is the CEO of Native Community Capital. And we've been talking about different types of loans. Dave's company can help tribes with loans for, their different programs. And then he also helps small business owners as well as community members with home loans, and maybe even some home remodels. I know out here in New Mexico with some of the Pueblos, especially out in San Felipe, they've been doing a lot of house building. And so, if you want to add on something, an addition on or something, I think you would want to talk to Dave Castillo's team out in Native Community Capital and see what that's all about. And you know what? They also offer another type of service, and that is some financial counseling. And they will help you understand your finances. They will help you to become more aware of, getting scammed, I think, too, right? Dave, there's so many sharks out there. I can't even tell you, and they do prey on Native community members and communities, and so again, just making us more aware of our finances and what is out there and what's legit and what's not legit. So having said that, Dave, I wanted you, if you could, to kind of just educate, give us a little bit of some one-on-one finance counseling, like, checking accounts and savings accounts, and why are those so important? And why is it important to have a bank hold your money? Because I know a family member that still cashes their checks at Walmart and then takes all the money home, and they have no checking account, their saving account. They tease me and say it's my sock, but that doesn't always work. So can you just kind of give us some information regarding checking accounts and savings, and why you should have that at a bank?
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to acknowledge is that, we all have different situations, and we never want to kind of, you got to walk in someone's shoes before you know what their situation is. So even though certainly there are some family members that I have that I would not do the same things that they do, there's a reason, right, why they're where they're at. So unfortunately, when you pull back and look at kind of Indian country or even a specific Pueblo or tribal community, you recognize that that there is a lot of economic and social distress. And so it's really a question for me. It really comes down to how well do you know yourself and your situation. It's easy to kind of avoid things, right? Credit reports are a good example, right? I had someone come to me for a small business loan. She has a home-based business. And I said, okay, great. She said, well, I need some supplies. I got a contract with the tribe, this, that, and the other, but I need some supplies and I need to go have that on stock. And then when I get my paid by the tribe, I can, pay that back. And I said, okay, that sounds great. That's exactly the kind of business that we want to help support. Talk to me about kind of your finances. What does your credit look like? Because obviously we're going to look at that as just one factor. And she said, oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. I mean, it's, she gave me a number. And even I took kind of a breath like, oh, my gosh. I said, well, that's okay.
Oh, did I say that?
It's the reality.
Right.
And then lo and behold, we got her with a counselor. We pulled the credit report and I said, it's not that bad. You thought it was really bad, but it's not. She said, well, I just never looked at it. So again, I mean, just like anything, right? I mean, you wouldn't go out to, wherever you go out to, with your friends or whatever without taking a look in the mirror, right?
Right.
I mean, you want to see what you look like. You want to make sure you're presentable. Same thing. If you're going to go before a lender, if you're going to ask someone for funds, you want to see what you look like and understand kind of where you're at. So there is a website called annualcreditreport.com. It's the only one that's approved by the federal government that's free. There's other ones that sound like it, but they're going to charge you a fee. So make sure you go to annualcreditreport.com.
Well, you know what though, Dave? I'm sorry. I have, is this a old wives' tale? But I would hear that the more times you check your credit report lowers. It goes down. Is that true?
That is true. It's called a hard inquiry versus a soft inquiry. So that means if you go down to the furniture rental place,
right,
or if you kind of try to get a phone at T-Mobile and then they decline you, and then you go over to Verizon and they decline you, those are all hard inquiries, and those do hit your credit report. This is different. What happened is that the credit bureaus, it used to be that you couldn't see your own credit report, if you can believe that. But back in the day, you couldn't access it. And so the federal government passed a law that said, no, that is the consumer's information. And you could get it, but you'd have to pay a fee, and it was complicated. It said, no, you need to make it easy, and you need to make it free. Once a year, you need to make that credit report available to a consumer if they request it. So you go on this website and you put in information that verifies you are who you are. And then, you have to go through a few things. So make sure you've got, the last 3 addresses of where you lived, you got to know what your birth date is, all that kind of stuff. But once it's not a hard inquiry, it's not considered a hard inquiry. So this is different than going and trying to get credit and doing a hard inquiry. So yes, you are correct. If you go out and try to pull credit here, there, and everywhere, yeah, you're going to have a bunch of hits on your credit report. And that's not good. But for your own information, by going through this annualcreditreport.com, you could do that too. There's also organizations, like one of the ones we work with is called the Southwest Native Assets Coalition. And all that organization does is financial literacy and homebuyer education and small dollar loans. And she's a certified counselor. And she can pull your credit for you on an educational basis. So she's got a relationship with the credit bureaus where you pay, I think it's like $9. And then they'll pull your credit report, and it won't hit it won't get listed because it's an educational.
So it won't even bother your score.
No.
It'll stay.
No.
Okay.
Again, I mean, the thing is like, if you're going to go out with your friends, would you rather kind of like not look at the mirror, just like, probably fine, and you just woke up from a nap, right? Like, you wouldn't do that. Go ahead and take a look, because it might not be as bad as you think. You might just need to put a little extra eyeliner on there, or
I don't know. I've seen some women that I didn't think they even owned a mirror, Dave.
Oh, hey, all right, we're not going to get into that.
No, but I know what you're saying, and it is true. I mean, and then again, talking about scams, you see so many. I know I get a bunch of these pre-qualified credit cards.
I know.
Those are high interest rate credit cards, aren't they?
Absolutely. And there is a Truth in Lending Act, which basically, if you flip that little piece of paper over, it'll tell you how much they're going to charge you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're going to give you the best rate for the best qualified individuals. You know, it's going to be this rate. Or they'll say it's 0% for the first, in the small print, for the first 90 days.
Yeah.
And then after 90 days, it jumps up to 29%,
Mm-hmm.
you know? I mean, think about that, right? I
Right.
mean, if you were letting someone borrow money at 29%, that means you give them $100, and when they pay you back, they give you $129 back.
Mm-mm.
I mean, that's expensive.
It's very expensive.
And it, you know, and depending on where your credit is at, you know, you will have to pay more for credit. But the point is that if you put a plan together, it's like anything, like going to the gym, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little overweight, but if I put the time in, if I put the work in, I know that in about a month, you know, I'm going to start shedding the pounds. I'm going to start toning up.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take work. So again, choose your hard.
Exactly.
You know, would you rather kind of keep getting denied especially when you need something that's really important,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's say you get a new job in town and, you know, your car's not going to make it. So you really do need a better car.
Right.
But guess what? Because you haven't been taking care of your credit,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to qualify for a loan to get that car.
Exactly.
Or you're going to have to get someone to co-sign for you, or you're going to have to pay through the nose.
Yeah.
So it's just, you know, choose your hard.
Exactly.
And let's do the work.
Yeah.
I mean, we know how to work hard, right? I mean, all those, everyone that goes out there and cleans ditches, that's hard work,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
The
No,
ceremony,
it does.
4 days, that's hard work. So you just do the work.
What's the difference between a bank like Wells Fargo? Boy, they better sponsor me. We've been plugging them all morning. Wells Fargo. What's the difference between a bank like Wells Fargo or a credit union? Because I notice there's a lot of commercials on TV with credit unions now trying to, I guess, increase membership by, you know, advertising what they have and better rates and so forth. So what would be the difference between investing your money in a bank versus investing your money in a credit union?
Yeah. Well, they both have, you know, their pros and cons. As a business, as a nonprofit enterprise, it's nice to go with a big bank because they've got all the flashy tools. It's easy to go online and kind of move money and, you know, send money to our clients and that and the other. We also have an account with a smaller bank, and yeah, I'll tell you, their system's a little clunkier. And we've also got an account with a credit union. And a little shout out to Nusenda Credit Union, who has an initiative in place to support Native entrepreneurs. And yeah, they're smaller, but the thing about a credit union is that they're local and they have members. So yeah, you're not a member of a family necessarily, right? They're not gonna cut corners for you. But the idea is that the money stays local. The people that work there are local. The people who manage the bank are local, as opposed to, you know, a big bank who, you know, the new manager just came in from North Carolina because, you know, they're expanding. And, you know, so there's pros and cons. You know, again, if you've got a business and, you know, you're starting to go statewide or going multi-state, yeah, you might want, you know, a bigger bank. If you're a community member who has a home-based business, maybe you make pottery or textile or jewelry, and you just need to make sure that when you head up the road to Santa Fe, or you go to, you know, Indian Market, or you go, you know, to Gathering or whatever, that you can go to a local branch and get some money out or make a deposit. Maybe that works for you. If you need, you know, a car loan and you're a member of a credit union, yeah, you'll probably get a little bit better a rate than if you just went, you know, through the financing at the car.
So basically, it's an individual preference of what your needs are at that time.
Yeah, I mean, shop around, right? I mean, you know, it's just like anything. I mean, if you're a small business owner and there's all kinds of vendors that you can use, well, some are going to be better than others. Some have better customer service. Some are local. Some maybe they cut you a deal.
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of different, but I mean, the point is I think when you're buying anything, you don't want to be passive, right? You don't want to just kind of give into the ad and expect that that's the whole truth.
Right.
It takes a little bit of time. I mean, I don't know. Think about what you buy the most. right? I mean, again, just going on with the going out example, I mean, the makeup, right? Like, are you going to buy your makeup at the swap meet? Or are you going to buy it at, what's that store called that my wife goes to? I can't
Ulta?
remember. Yeah, Ulta, right? And when you
Sephora?
go to Ulta, you can get you can get the lower priced makeup, or you can get a high priced makeup. Which one's better?
Right.
I mean, there is a difference, right?
Right.
So,
No, and I agree. And it is. And it's just like people will drive Fords for a reason. Some people prefer Chevy. Some prefer Toyota. Yeah, it is all a preference. And so when you're out there and you're looking around, just see where you're at. I mean, you can always grow. You can always grow and change to a different financial institution. You don't always have to stay where you're at. You can move your money around, and what's going to work best for you and your family, I think, is the bottom line, or your business, you know. Right. So, well, thank you. Thanks, Dave, for that. You know, I know with this pandemic, I kind of want to take this just for a minute. I want to take it down a different road. Financially, where do you see? I know this probably is a big question for you, but how do you see the economics coming out of this? In your opinion, this is just your opinion, nobody else's, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been asking our small business clients that because some of them are really struggling, you know, without naming names. But, you know, our retail guys, the ones that own restaurants, you know, and then, you know, they're the ones that are probably hit the hardest. I know one of our guys has been making a go of it. And just getting really creative, and that's the thing I really appreciate about small business owners is they don't have any other choice but to solve problems every day on how to, you know, make sure their business is running. So when I look across kind of just the folks that I know, I mean, I'm optimistic because of the stimulus that's coming down. I think, you know, there's this idea of kind of a greed-based economics versus a relationship-based economics.
Right.
And I think, you know, we came out of you know, the last 4 years of, you know, being kind of greed-based, you know, and now I think we're trending back to, especially with the pandemic and kind of really people getting hurt, families getting affected, and you know, and then, you know, natural disasters. I think it's encouraged us to think more about community. So I'm encouraged by that. I will tell you that our organization has benefited from that. You know, people are kind of coming out of the woodwork saying, how can we help? Whether that's our partners in the foundation world or the banking industry or the federal and state governments. So in that sense, I am optimistic. I also know that, you know, Native people are very resilient, right? Like, this isn't the first crisis Native people have had to confront.
Right.
As a matter of fact, that's what tribal leaders were saying. It's like, well, you know, when the economy said, well, welcome to our world, you know?
Right.
I mean,
and this is why, you know, Diego and I, when we talk, sometimes he'll come on my show and vice versa. But, you know, him and I talk a lot about supporting our mom and pop restaurants and stores, the real community-based, and not buy so much from a chain. And yes, I get it. Sometimes the chains, restaurants, or even stores have a little bit more variety or you know, a little bit more upscale. But when you can, you know, buy from your local, you know, the store down the road, you know, and because they have families too, they need that support as well.
That's right.
So, you know, as well as in-state tourism. So we have been really trying to keep that going and doing our part and encouraging our listeners to do the same. I know Diego goes to the Pinon Company coffee place, and that's a local New Mexico coffee joint, and he gets his coffee from there. So we're always trying to put their name out there and have people go over there and get some coffee and a biscuitito, something from over there. But yeah, I mean, I'm just amazed by how much the world is changing and has changed within the last 2 years.
Yeah, and that's the one thing we can count on, right? It's just going to continue to change. And I know a friend of mine back in 2012, when they were supposed to be like the end of the world or whatever.
1999. Yeah, there
I
was
can't
another
remember.
time too after 1999, and probably was 2012, something with the numbers or something. But yeah.
Yeah, but a friend of mine from Hope Villa, her auntie was talking to her about that. She was telling us about it and said, everyone's talking about this like, everything's going to collapse and it's going to be destruction. But she said, in our traditional way, what that means is that there's going to be a change in consciousness and you have to be ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
You can decide to either prepare yourself for the change that's going to come, or you can ignore it and suffer the consequences.
Exactly.
So she said, don't be afraid. We've always had to deal with change.
Yep.
Deal with it. So I was like, oh man, Auntie. Yeah. That's what we need to hear.
I know. Well, our aunties, I think, all have some very wise words. I know my aunts did growing up, and I miss my Aunt Dorothy. She was just one of the best with advice, and she had a very dry sense of humor, so I miss that. As we're winding down, I hope this is just one of many visits that we get to have with you, Dave, because just like the world, our economic world is forever changing as well. And Dave, thank you again for joining me, and I hope, like I said, we get to meet up again, and you have some other fun facts for us and some other interesting economic experiences and news that we need to be aware of.
Thank you, Leanne. We'll look forward to it.
All right. Everybody, have a good day today. Remember social distancing, wearing your mask. We're still under a mandate. And if you haven't gotten your vaccination, get out there and get it done. We got to keep moving. And we need to be proactive. So let's get that going. And everybody, see you next week. Take care.
Native Community Capital.